the issue of sustainability and adequate capitalization of the institution. Honorable members correctly observed that for the bank to deliver affordable and accessible credit to women, it must be supported by strong and consistent financial backing. Without sufficient capitalization, the institution risks being constrained by high operational costs and inflationary pressures that may ultimately translate into higher lending rates for borrowers. If we are serious about empowering women economically, then we must ensure that the institutions designed for this purpose are adequately resourced and able to operate on a stable and sustainable footing. Madam Speaker, ma'am, drawing from the collective wisdom of this House, several constructive recommendations have emerged that can strengthen the operations and impact of the Zimbabwe Women's Microfinance Bank. Foremost among these is the need to accelerate the decentralization of the banking services. The expansion of urgent banking networks, mobile banking units, and community-based access points will significantly enhance the bank's reach and bring financial services closer to women in wards and villages across the country. Such an approach would not only improve accessibility but would also deepen trust and awareness within local communities. There is also a strong case for a more deliberate and sustained capitalization strategy for the institution. Collaboration between the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development and the ministry responsible for women affairs will be critical in ensuring that the bank is adequately funded to fulfill its mandate. Strategic financial support would enable the institution to provide affordable credit, scale up its operations, and remain resilient in face of economic fluctuations. In addition, the importance of financial literacy cannot be overstated. Access to credit must be complemented by comprehensive financial education programs that equip women with the knowledge and skills required to manage loans, maintain proper financial records, and grow sustainable enterprises. Strengthening training initiatives in entrepreneurship, bookkeeping, and financial management will ensure that beneficiaries are not only able to access funding but also to utilize it effectively for long-term economic growth. Finally, the House emphasized the need for strong governance and oversight mechanism within the bank. Transparency, accountability, and sound internal controls are essential to maintaining public confidence in the institution. Regular audits and monitoring mechanisms will ensure that the bank remains true to its mandate and the financial resources reach the women for whom they are intended. Honorable Madam Speaker, ma'am, as I bring the debate to a close, it is important to reflect on the broader significance of this institution. The Zimbabwe Women's Microfinance Bank represents more than a financial service provider. It is a symbol of our national commitment to inclusive economic development. When women are empowered with access to capital, skills, and opportunities, the benefits extend far beyond individual households. They strengthen communities, stimulate local economies, and contribute meaningfully to national prosperity. The message that has emerged clearly from this House is not one of doubt about the relevance of the institution, but rather a call for its strengthening and refinement so that it can fully deliver on its noble mandate. With continued oversight, adequate support, and strategic improvements, the Zimbabwe Women's Microfinance Bank can remain a transformative vehicle for women's economic empowerment in our country. I move that the motion be adopted. I so submit. Thank you.
I put the question that the report be now adopted. Those who have that opinion will say aye. Those of the contrary opinion will say no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. The question is affirmed and the report is adopted. Madam Speaker, ma'am, I move that we may revert back to order number 16 on today's order paper. Who seconds?
I second, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Notice of motion number 16, Honorable Kuka.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, ma'am. I move that the motion. I move the motion standing in my name.
Who seconds?
I second, Madam Speaker, ma'am.
Thank you, Honorable Kuka.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, ma'am. Madam Speaker, ma'am, I rise before this august house today with a sense of pride and purpose. The motion now I'm about to present is not just a mere proposal. It is a combination of the collective voice of Zimbabwe's youth. I would like to acknowledge the Parliament Youth Caucus, which has been instrumental in driving this initiative. On the 28th and the 29th of March 2025, the caucus hosted the inaugural Youth Model Parliament, a groundbreaking program made possible through the general support of the Parliament of Zimbabwe, the Zimbabwe Institute, and the Zimbabwe Youth Council. This landmark event brought together young people from across the country's 10 provinces, providing a platform for them to raise their voices, share their ideas, and deliberate on matters that affect their lives. The deliberations and the resolutions from this historic event have informed the motion before us today. It is a testament to the power of youth engagement and the importance of creating spaces for young people to participate in decision-making processes. Madam Speaker, ma'am, I am honored to present this motion which seeks to enhance youth participation and representation in decision-making bodies and institutions. Appreciating the legal framework for youth representation in the National Assembly, I acknowledge that young people play a critical role in the development of our nation, leveraging on their innovative ideas and deeper understanding of issues affecting their generation. Madam Speaker, ma'am, I note that historically, Zimbabwe's government structures have been dominated by older generations, mostly men, leading to significant underrepresentation of the youth and especially young women. This demographic exclusion is a critical concern, given that most of the Zimbabwean's population, 67.7%, is under 35, of which 27% is aged 18 to 34. Recognizing this demographic dividend of young people, it is imperative that we ensure their voices are adequately represented in all spheres of governance and should, in theory, be a powerful political force. However, I am concerned by the limited youth representation in decision-making bodies at every level of government, including private and public enterprises. This underrepresentation hampers the holistic representation of youth voices and perspectives, which are crucial for the development and progress of our nation. Madam Speaker, ma'am, the Constitution of Zimbabwe, Amendment number 20, Act of 2013, lays the groundwork for youth participation and representation. Section 20 of the Constitution mandates that the state and all institutions and agencies of government at every level must take reasonable measures, including affirmative action programs, to ensure that youths have opportunities to associate and to be represented and participate in political, social, economic and other spheres of life. This provision establishes a constitutional obligation on the state to actively promote youth representation and participation across various aspects of Zimbabwe society, including the political spheres. It specifically mentions representation, implying that the state should work towards ensuring that the voices and interests of young people are reflected in decision-making bodies. Furthermore, Constitutional Amendment number 2 of 2021 introduces a more concrete measure for youth representation in the National Assembly. Article 124 1C of this amendment reserves 10 seats for young candidates aged 21 to 35 who are elected under the list of proportional representation system. This means that political parties' list of candidates for these 10 seats must be alternate between female and male candidates. This has been successfully implemented at the level of National Assembly and must therefore also cascade down to the local government level. Madam Speaker, ma'am, the youth quota system is generally accepted form of affirmative action to address imbalances in representation in the continent and beyond. In Kenya, for example, Article 100 of the Constitution mandates their parliament to enact legislation to promote the representation of marginalized groups, including youth, women, persons with disabilities, ethnic and other minorities, and marginalized communities. Similarly, Article 54 of their constitution specifically requires the state to take measures including affirmative action programs to ensure that youth have opportunities to associate, be represented and participate in political, social, economic and other spheres of life. Madam Speaker, ma'am, allow me to cite a few other examples from the continent. Uganda's National Youth Council Act provides for youth representation in various governance structures, including advisory roles in public institutions. Youth representatives are appointed to district and national boards, including some parastatals, especially those related to education, sports, and youth development. Rwanda's National Youth Council elects youth representatives who serve on government advisory boards and commissions, including those overseeing parastatal functions. The Rwandan government also actively integrates youth in strategic planning bodies such as the Rwanda Development Board and ICT-focused agencies. While not a formal quota, South Africa's National Youth Policy promotes youth participation in governments and some parastatals such as the National Youth Development Agents and the South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC. Zimbabwe currently lacks a formal youth quota in parastatal governance through the 10% youth quota in Parliament 2023 says as the precedent. Introducing youth representation in bodies like ZESA, NRZ and ZEMRA could enhance responsiveness, innovation and accountability. Madam Speaker, ma'am, given the critical role of young people in our nation's development and their demographic significance, it is essential that we take concrete steps to enhance their representation in decision-making bodies. Now, therefore, I move that this House recommends that the Minister of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs takes the following actions to enhance youth representation in decision-making bodies. Creates a provision for the enactment of 30% youth quota in provincial councils and local authorities, ensuring that young people have meaningful voices in decision-making processes that affect their lives and communities. enacts a provision that compels the appointments of at least one youth in every public service board, providing young people with opportunities to contribute to policy formulation and implementation. Enhances the existing women's quota framework in local authorities by mandating that at least one in every 3 nominees under the quota be a youth aged 21 to 35 years. Promoting intergenerational collaboration and ensuring that youth perspectives are represented. We are not asking for handouts or favors, Madam Speaker, ma'am. We are invoking our constitutional rights to fair representation and a seat at the decision-making table as young people. We want to contribute to shaping the future of our nation, ensuring that our voices are heard. Our local authorities should reflect the energy and creativity of our youth. We cannot afford to wait another decade to implement solutions and to harness the democratic dividend of the young, energetic Zimbabweans. Zimbabwe's future is young, yet we are not fully tapping into the overflowing youthful potential. In the council chambers of our towns, cities, and rural communities, the voices of our youth must be heard. Their ideas must be valued and their participation must be encouraged. It is time for us to take bold steps towards creating a future that is inclusive, equitable, and just for all. As I conclude, Madam Speaker, I urge esteemed members of Parliament to support this motion and work towards enhancing youth participation in decision-making bodies. Let us seize this opportunity to shape a brighter future for Zimbabwe, a future that is driven by the energy, creativity, and passion of our youth. Together we can build a nation that is prosperous, peaceful, and just for all its citizens. I so submit.
Thank you, Honorable Kuka. The question before the House is a motion by Honorable Kuka as set forth on page 1001 of today's order paper. Is there any debate? Honorable Chakukura.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, ma'am. Good afternoon. Madam Speaker, ma'am, thank you for giving me this opportunity to second and support the motion that has been brought into the House by Honorable Cook. It will be amiss if I do not credit the Zimbabwe Parliamentary Youth Caucus, Zimbabwe Institute, Zimbabwe Youth Council, and the multitude of young people who gathered here in the August House on the 28th and 29th of March 2025 to propose some of these important deliberations. Madam Speaker, ma'am, this motion is important because it seeks to, number one, bridge the generational gap in policy making legislators incorporate the thoughts, experiences, and expectations of young people, as well as the ever-changing demands of the world as they experience it. Number two, it addresses inclusive governance and enhances our democracy. Number three, ultimately, the inclusion of young people must translate to address challenges that they face, such as unemployment, access to relevant skills, and education, as well as enabling them to be champions in emerging issues of the environment and climate change. By instituting the youth quotas, the government took deliberate and intentional steps towards guaranteeing youth participation and representation. Madam Speaker, ma'am, Zimbabwe is entering the final mile of achieving Vision 2030, and it is now imperative that all efforts to be made to harness our youth demographic dividend. Over 67% of our population is under the age of 35. Harnessing demographic dividend demands us to integrate youth into policy making that shapes education, skills, jobs, and technology adoption. Inclusive policies have a positive correlationship with effective governance, reduced incidence of conflict and gender gender parity, and greater citizen satisfaction. Programs that integrate youth into dialogue and decision forums are a cost-effective prevention tool compared to ex-post stabilization spending. The youth quotas will provide such an opportunity. Madam Speaker, ma'am, honorable members, the motion therefore before us today aligns with Zimbabwe's constitutional principles on participation and equality, and with regional or international commitments, which is African Youth Charter SDG 16 on inclusive institutions, SDG 8 on decent work, and builds upon the momentum of the Youth Model Parliament, which was held on the 28th to the 29th of March 2025, by translating deliberations into legally anchored mechanisms. This motion also dovetails with the National Youth Empowerment Strategy 2026 to 2030, which was recently approved to complement the National Development Strategy 1, NDS 1, and its successor, NDS 2, focusing on economic empowerment, technology and digital transformation, health and well-being, and most importantly on governance and political participation, which is the subject under consideration. Madam Speaker, ma'am, the strategy ensures youth are not left behind in Zimbabwe's development and includes a monitoring and evaluation framework to track youth participation. By supporting this motion, the House will demonstrate its commitment to NDS 2 and the National Youth Empowerment Strategy. The House will be confirming that the young people who gathered here in March 2025, that their voices count and the youth have a place in Zimbabwe's shared vision. Turning to the public boards, Zimbabwe has over 100 public service boards, yet there is no deliberate effort to include young people in the bodies. Madam Speaker, ma'am, we need a robust strategy on inclusion so that young people can be represented at these high levels. We have a lot of young people who are skilled and capable. We are not in any way suggesting handpicking for the sake of fulfilling quotas, but as a system of meritocracy that recognizes the vast skills and knowledge residing in young people. In closing, Madam Speaker, ma'am, the motion before us today is an investment in the effective governance and long-term prosperity of Zimbabwe, and many countries will continue here to learn from us. By formalizing youth representation through the youth quotas, resourcing participation, and enforcing accountability for feedback, Parliament can convert the energy demonstrated at the Youth Model Parliament into an enduring institutional capability and measurable development gains. The time is now for us to make the aspirations of our youth a reality. This motion propels us towards fulfilling our constitutional mandate as the august House of laying the foundation for youth participation and representation. Madam Speaker, ma'am, Section 20 of the Constitution compels us to, I quote, the state and all the institutions and agencies of government at every level must take reasonable measures, including affirmative action programs to ensure that youth have opportunities to associate and to be represented and participate in political, social, economic, and other spheres of life. Madam Speaker, ma'am, the time is now. The youth must shine. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Jakukura. Honorable Elmnemu.
Mazvita mubati wechigaro maswera sei. Ndodawo kuti ini ndiso mazwi pamusoro pevechidiki vanova vatungamiriri veparliament vanopinda muno kuti vawanikwe vachiwanda kudarika zvavari nhasi. Ndinotenderana nazvo zvizhinji nekuti ndanga ndichitarisa honorable speaker ma'am kuti uwandu hwemayuthi ari munyika muno mose anokurira uwandu hwevakuru vari munyika mose. Pandanga ndichitarisa mapercentage aripo kana kuti uwandu hwacho uri kuratidza kuti mayuthi anodarika vechidiki vanodarika 60% yepopulation yemuZimbabwe. Zvino kana takazotarisa zvakare tichiongorora utungamiriri hwevechidiki ma-MP echidiki vari muno ndiri kuona kuti varipo 35 which means vanongoriko 35 zvinoreva kuti varipo 35 kuti vamiririre vanhu vano uwandu hunosvika 60%. Ndiri kuona tisina kuita zvinhu zvakaenzana zvisina kunaka. Ndinoona kuti vechidiki vanofanirwa kuti vanziwanzwei nekuti naivo vakawanda pakutarisa vanhu vari muZimbabwe. Ndinoenderana nekureva kwakaita honorable Sakupanya vanhu vavo MP vechidiki vari muno vakati ivo pakasave nevamiririri vechidiki ma-MP vechidiki muno muparliamendi munogadzirwa mutemo unoendeswa kune vechidiki, asi pasingagadzirwe mutemo nevechidiki unoenderana nevechidiki. Vakataura ipapo nechingezi vakati without youth MPs you get laws made for the youth not by the youth. Zvichireva kuti zvinoda kuti ivo vechidiki vauye vataure nhuna dzavo muno vogadzira mutemo honorable speaker ma'am unoenderana nevechidiki vari kunzoko. Tinotaura kuti vechidiki ndo ramangwana redu, asi takatarira nhamba kana kuti uwandu hwevechidiki vari muno hazvisi kundiitira zvakanaka kuti titi vechidiki ndo remangwana redu. Hazvisi kuenderana, hazvisi zvamuchose, nekuti ivo vechidika ndivo vanoziva kuti iko zvino tikagadzira zvakadai tinobofamba nazvo nemakore nekuti vachine upenyu kudarika vechikuru. Saka ndinoona kuti zvakanaka zvizhinji kuti tiwedzere vechidiki, kwete muno muparliamendi chete, kwete kunyangwe kumakanzuru kumabasa ikoko ivo vamiriri vechidiki ngavange variko ikoko. Kana tikati isusu tikuda 20% honorable speaker yekuti vechidiki vangu vachimirire kana 30% ngaiende zvakare kumabasa ikoko, kukanzuru, kumaministiri, kumadepartments ose ehurumende, kumabazi ese ehurumende ngavaende ikoko. Zvinoita kuti nyika yedu isumukire, nekuti vechidiki ndo vachiri kutema dzinobva ropa, vachiri kumhanya nekufunga nekukopera kunze kwenyika uko vachikwanisa kuti nyika yedu ifambire mberi zvakanaka. Iyo mutemo iyoyi inoda zvakare vechidiki kuti vange vachimira zvizhinji pairi. Uyezve takatadza honorable speaker kuti vechidiki vange vachipinda mumabasa, vange vachipindawo muparliamendi muno vachigadzira mutemo, vachishandidzana pamwe chete nevechikuru aripo kuti vagadzire mitemo inonakira vechidiki kuti varambe vari pamberi pakubudiririsa nyika yedu yeZimbabwe. Makaona tikazvitadzira izvozvo tinenge tagadzira ruvengo nevechidiki kuti vechidiki vavo vaende kunotsvaga zvinodhaka, zvinomwiwa zvinodhaka nezvinokuwadza upenyu hwavo. Tinenge takuwadza nyika zvakare, hapana chatinenge taita ipapo. Ndinoona kuti kune inonzi junior parliament yakanaka zvikuru, iyo yehurumende yevechidiki yakagadzirwa, asi uchingori mucherechedzo chete muno muZimbabwe. Asi tinoda kuti mucherechedzo iwoyo uende pakutonogadzira ugadziro kuti toita bumbiro nemutemo wekuti vanofanira kunge vachitoripo nekuti kufa kwehosi inosiya imwe wechidiki ava vakaona vakuru vachiita naivo vanobva vazvibata hatizowana madzedzereke kana kuti hatizowana vanonge vakuda kutsvaga zvekunwa zvinodhaka kana kudini asi tinowana vanenge vachishandira nyika yavo nekuti vanenge vadzidziswa gavi rakabva kumashuriro vanenge vachinyatsoziva kuti aiwa padzinde paipai takadzidza zvinoti zvino tikada kuzoti isusu tovamirira kuti vakure vozotanga kudzidziswa tinoona vana vachizorasa gwara tozoita sekunge tisina tsika dzakanaka muno muzimbabwe asi tsika yedu yekunge tisina kunge tikavatora vachiri vadiki inenge yakashata. Ndikuona kuti makatarira muzvikoro mose muri kudzidzwa kana mumayunivhesiti muri kudzidzwa umu honorable speaker muri kudzidzwa mune vechidiki vakati wandei ngativapei mvumo yekuti vauye varatidzire zvavari kudzidza kuratidza kuti aiwa vanazvo vakukwanisa kuita basa nemazvo sekudzidza kwavanenge vakaita. Tinotenda kana manzwisisa. Ndinokuedza kutaura kuti kana vechidiki vachinge vadzidza vanofanira kuuya kuzoshanda zvidzidzo zvacho zvavakadzidza vanofanira kuuya kuzozvishanda kuti nyika yedu ibudirire. Takatarisa Honorable Speaker.
Order, honorable members. Can the honorable member please be held in silence? Order.
Takatarisa chirongwa Honorable Speaker sechakauya nehurumende chekugadzira mabindu akugadzirwa kumaruwa kwedu avari kuti village business units. Tine vana vakadzidza zvidzidzo zvekurima vakati wandei. Vana ivavo dai varivo vari kutungamirira vachienda ikoko tinoona kuti mabindu ese iwayo anosumukira zvakanaka. Bati makatarisa pamwe mabindu ari kufa nekuti haana vechidiki vane simba vane njere vari kuda kunyatsozvimhanyisa kuti vachinyatsoziva kuti aiwa takarima nyika yedu inobudirira. Zvino kunzvimbo ikoko topedzisira taakuwana vari kuita zvekudhakwa nekudii nekuti havasi kupiwa mukana wokuti vaende kunoshandira maVBU iwayo. Saka ndinotenda zvikuru mubato wechigaro ndichienderana zvizhinji nenhau iyoyo kuti 10% iri kutaurwa yeproportional representative yemayouth kuti apinde muno 10% ishoma. Ngatitowedzerai kuti vechidiki ndivo vakazara nesimba vachine ropa riri kugwina-gwina vanokwanisa kuti zvinhu zvimhanye. Ndinotenda zvikuru dai kuti zvinhu zvakafamba saizvozvo tinoona vechidiki kunyange nevari muno mucherechedzo wezvinhu zvakanaka vari muno vari kutoratidza kuti basa riri kufamba zvakanaka saka vakawedzerwa nhamba yavo momunomu vakawedzerwa. Ndinoona zvinhu zvedu zvinofamba zvakanaka nyika ikabudirira nyika yeZimbabwe yakaenda kumberi. Asi chandinoda kuti chingotarisiswa Honorable Speaker ndechekumatorero atinoita ivavo vechidiki vacho nekuti pamwe pacho unozopedzisira wakuona kuti pamwe vechidiki vacho ivavo kutopinda kwavo vanenge vaine mumwe mukuru pamberi avo vamwe vanenge vari kumamisha vechidiki vanenge vaine pfungwa dzakarodzeka dzakapinzika havagone kuwana mukana iwoyo nekuti pamwe panenge paine political influence yavanoti pachirungu political influence yekuti pamwe havasi kuwaniswa mukana nekuti mumwe anenge akungotarisavo kwake asi takanyatsotora nekuenzanirana kwenzvimbo tichinyatsotarisa vanhu vose tinoona kuti tinogona kutora vechidiki ava vakauya vakabata basa rakanaka muparliamendi muno zvakanaka. Ndinotenda newayo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mnemo. Is there any further debate? I recognize the acting government chief whip.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the debate do now adjourn.
Who seconds?
I second, Mr. Speaker.
It has been moved that the debate be now adjourned. Is there any debate? I put the question that the debate be now adjourned. Those of that opinion will say aye. Those of the contrary opinion will say no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. The question is accordingly affirmed and the debate is adjourned. To what day, Honorable?
To tomorrow, Mr. Speaker, sir.
The debate is adjourned to tomorrow. Thank you. I recognize you again.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I move that we revert back to order number 4 on today's order paper.
Who seconds?
I second, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. You said order number 4, right? Thank you. Order, honorable members. The clerk will read the 4th order of the day.
Adjourned debates on motion on the second reading of the Climate Change Management Bill, SB 5, 2025.
Thank you. When this debate was adjourned on the 9th of April 2026, the question before the House was a motion by the Honorable Minister of Environment, Climate and Wildlife that the Climate Change Management Bill HB 5 of 2025 be now read a second time. Is there any debate? Yes, I recognize the Honorable Minister.
First, Mr. Speaker, I would like to extend my gratitude to the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Environment, Climate and Wildlife for their comprehensive report, which is a reflection of views of Zimbabweans at large on the Climate Change Management Bill. We have also noted with appreciation the issues raised in the debate by this august House. I will therefore proceed to address the issues. Let me start by addressing the issue relating to green building standards, health and disaster risk reduction. One of the objectives of the Climate Change Management Bill is the mainstreaming climate change across all sectors of the economy through enhanced coordination by the Ministry of Environment, Climate and Wildlife. In the report, as well as during the debate, various interventions were made, including on the need to legislate green building standards and to strengthen hospitals for disaster response. We have ministerial portfolio committees responsible for regulating building standards, health disaster response, to mention just a few. When the bill passes into law with the approval of the honorable members of this House, we will be able to review the relevant legislation with the responsible ministries such as Ministry of Local Government and Public Works and the ministry responsible for housing, including the Ministry of Health. We will also look into issues of climate change disaster response with the relevant ministries such as the Ministry of Local Government and Public Works and the Ministry of Health. Climate change is a scourge that cuts across all sectors of government. The purpose of this bill is to foster coordination in matters relating to climate change to ensure that all sectors of government play their part in both mitigation and adaptation to climate change. Free, prior and informed consent. There was our rural communities under the leadership of the traditional leaders are the custodians of the forest in which we are carrying out carbon trading. It would therefore be grossly irregular to promulgate legislation on carbon trading without ensuring that they are adequately consulted and they have expressed their views on the matter. That is why the bill contains an appendix in the second schedule outlining the modalities for free, prior, and informed consent by the affected communities. This ensures that communities are directly involved through comprehensive consultations, thus ensuring that no one is left behind in the process of coming up with this bill, and also in the process of registering carbon credits. No project shall be approved without clear evidence of free, prior, and informed consent in line with the set guidelines. In relation to issues of appeals and governance redress mechanisms, concerns were raised that power is being concentrated in one single ministry and there should be an independent tribunal to resolve disputes. The principle of administrative justice places emphasis on the exhaustion of local remedies before resorting to other platforms. In the bill, where a person is aggrieved by the authority's decision, their response lies with the minister. The current practice when addressing appeals within the ministry and indeed other government bodies is to involve the relevant experts who make recommendations to the minister. So the minister does not make responses as an individual, but there's a lot of consultative processes that take place. The minister then acts upon these recommendations in deciding on the appeal. Further, if one is not satisfied with the minister's decision, the bill provides that they can appeal against this decision to the administrative court. So the courts are the final center to hear the appeals. This means the minister does not have the final say on the matter. The minister's decision can either be confirmed or overturned by the courts. On general functions of the minister, pertaining to the other general functions of the minister, we have removed the regulatory functions and deleted them to the department, leaving the minister with the power to promulgate regulations, report on state of the climate change and ozone layer protection to Parliament, and make recommendations on treaties to be entered into and ratified by government. On matters relating to devolution, Part 6 of the bill seeks to mainstream climate change across ministries, departments, and agencies, including local authorities. These entities shall be mandated to appoint focal officers and include climate change into their development plans, budgets, and actively implementation. By extension, the response to climate change shall be defined through the consultative process which is undertaken by local authorities in drafting their plans. They do consult. I attended some of the consultations as Member of Parliament of Bulilima district. Every local authority shall be granted the power to make the necessary bylaws to advance the implementation of its obligations under the Act. This is in line with the devolution agenda under Section 264 of the Constitution and is detailed under NDS 2. On women involvement in climate action, in response to interventions on the hardships faced by women, the bill recognizing different societal groups
who are especially impacted by climate change, including women. That is why clause 5.2.1 calls upon the recognition of vulnerable groups and their inclusion in decision-making processes. Clause 8X supports the mainstreaming of gender, equity, and inclusion of vulnerable and marginalized groups. Part 5 prioritizes gender equality and inclusivity in operations of the National Climate Fund. These vulnerable groups are people who are at high risk to climate change impacts, who include women, children, the elderly, and the youth, and the disabled. The National Climate Fund, on issues to do with National Climate Fund, being a statutory fund, the Climate Fund shall be governed by the Public Finance Management Act, Chapter 22-19. The Act mandates parliamentary reports on public funds, including statutory funds. It also provides for auditing of funds by both internal and external auditors. It would therefore be inaccurate to say the National Climate Fund will be solely under the purview of the ministry without proper parliamentary and public oversight. On emission standards, the Climate Change Bill is meant to complement existing legislation without creating overlaps and conflicts. While the bill provides for carbon trading, for the regulation of greenhouse gases, for the purposes of advancing climate change mitigation, the Environmental Management Act, Chapter 20-27, regulates general pollution standards.
Order, Honourable Minister. Order, please take your seat. Honourable members, the doorkeepers, can you please ensure that no one sits at the back there? Honourable members are supposed to take their seats in the proper designated places. Only one honourable member can come there for signing, but not to group everyone there. Now there's too much noise, the minister cannot be heard properly. So please, one person at a time there. Otherwise we'll end up saying they must stop the registers. You may continue, Honourable Minister.
I'll repeat on emission standards. The Climate Change Bill is meant to complement existing legislation without creating overlaps and conflicts. While the bill provides for carbon trading, for the regulation of greenhouse gases, for the purposes of advancing climate change mitigation, the Environmental Management Bill, Act, Chapter 20-27, regulates general pollution standards. There is therefore no duplication of mandates. The bill provides for the promulgation of emissions trading regulations, which will result in the establishment of a national emission standard scheme. This will require the establishment of a specific greenhouse gas emission standards after specific sector informed by the requisite scientific studies undertaken in the country. On share of proceeds from carbon trading, in addressing the issue of benefit sharing from carbon trading with communities, the ministry appreciates the role played by our rural communities in conserving our natural resources, thus making carbon trading possible. Members advocated for 40% of the share of proceeds to government to be disbursed to local communities with a model trust deed to online the conditions. In light of this, we are going to develop a constitution to guide utilization of the government scheme, share scheme, so that these proceeds are guided accordingly by the Constitution as recommended. Just transition and the use of coal. The bill does not in any way prohibit Zimbabwe from using its God-given resources, which is coal. It recognizes our level of development and the need to address critical matters such as energy security, the need to industrialize. However, as we develop, the bill seeks to ensure that Zimbabwe plays its part in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and advancing sustainable development, taking advantage of the schemes such as carbon trading, incentivization of emission, reducing activities, and the general trend in cost reduction in renewable energy sectors such as solar, wind, and hydro. Cleaner technologies further offer opportunities to modernize our industries, transport sector, agriculture, and waste management. The bill is part of the broader measures we need to ensure access to global markets, products competitiveness, and circumvent restrictions such as those being implemented by the European Union through the carbon border adjustment mechanism. There is a punishment which the European Union has introduced to our products if we are exporting. They've introduced this punishment to us. And we are saying we recognize that they are doing that. And therefore, in our doing, in our work, we will avoid so that our products can continue to be exportable. Recycling, reporting recycling to Parliament. The Ministry recognizing the need to report more frequently to Parliament. We therefore propose that instead of 5 years reporting cycle proposed in the bill, the Minister reports after every 2 years. The justification is that this will align with the country's biannual transparency reporting obligations to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Paris Agreements. So we are proposing a 2-year reporting cycle to Parliament so that it's in sync with the international standards. Alignment with international standards. Honorable members raised the issue of our definitions not aligning with those provided for by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. The Ministry has taken note, and alignment of definitions as proposed will be effected. Issue to do with climate change officers. Given the magnitude and scale of challenge we are faced with, dedicated climate change officers and inspectors are required. These officers will be mandated with implementing the various provisions of this Act, assist local authorities, communities, and government structures in mainstreaming climate change and monitoring and reporting climate change activities. Their role is distinct from that of EMA officers, who are mandated with implementation of EMA Environmental Management Act. So the EMA officers and our officers are different and are clearly overwhelmed given the myriad of environmental challenges that we are facing as a country. However, it should be noted that the roles of the climate change officers are complementary. They don't duplicate, they are complementary. Establishment of an independent climate commission. Honorable members proposed the establishment of an independent climate commission to take into consideration the participation of civil society, development partners, and private sector. While we recognize the importance of these proposals, it might mitigate against the avoidance of a bloated civil servant. We are already burdened with the bill of paying the current workers. So if we bloat the service, then it will be very difficult for government to cope. The bill proposes that the minister may set up liaison committees, which will be subject specific and time bound, with clear deliverables within a given time. The minister proposes that we expand the scope of the proposed committees to include civil society organizations, local authorities, development partners, and the private sector, as well as other organizations representing social interest groups. Furthermore, this is in line with the provisions of the National Climate Policy, which proposes the formulation of a multi-stakeholder committee whose operationalization is awaiting this legislation. Making the Climate Change Management Department as an authority. This was a proposal. The ministry takes note of the recommendation by honorable members of transitioning the department into an authority. On this matter, the ministry shall make further consultations with the Attorney General's office to see if it's feasible. Mr. Speaker. On legislation of the Climate Change Management Department, there is need to legislate the Climate Change Management Department. Without the requisite powers, the department will not be able to effectively collect the requisite data required for the reporting under Article 13 of the Paris Agreement and policy making and enforce provisions of this Act, as well as discharge its duties as a designated national authority on carbon trading in line with Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. In addition, the department needs to ensure streamlining of climate change in all MDAs and non-state entities, establish national emissions trading scheme, and establish and manage the National Climate Fund, all of which require powers bestowed by this Honorable House. On legislation of units under the Climate Change Management Department, Mr. Speaker, as rightly pointed out by members, the form and shape of government departments are subject to regulation by the Public Service Commission. I therefore propose that the establishment of the department at law clearly spelling out this function and powers, but leaving out the various units and personnel. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, we have noted the committee's report and interventions during debate of the honorable members of this House, and we shall draft a notice of amendment to reflect the changes that we have effected. For those issues that do not warrant amendment, I believe we have sufficiently justified the reasons thereof in our response. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Can you approach the clerk, Honorable Minister? I put...
Point of order.
What is your point of order?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to commend the minister. It also motivates our honorable members to prepare for debates. When we make recommendations, the ministers listen and they come and actually propose changes, it makes the parliament live, and it also motivates us to even research, knowing that if we make contributions, they will be taken into consideration. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Amausa. It was not necessarily a point of order. It's appreciative, yes, and you could have mentioned it even when we went to the communist state. But anyway, all the same, thank you. Right, I put the question that the Climate Change Management Bill HB 5 2025 be now read a second time. Those who are of that opinion will say aye. Those of the contrary opinion will say no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. The question is accordingly affirmed, and the clerk will read the bill a second time.
Climate Change Management Bill, HB 5 2025.
Thank you. Honorable Minister, I'd ask you to approach the clerk. Just a few moments, honorable members, may you indulge me. Thank you, right. What day for committee, Honorable Minister? Please take your stand.
Thursday.
You may rise up and...
Okay. I propose that we bring in the amendments on and we...
The committee stage?
Yes, it's committee stage, yes.
On Thursday?
On Thursday, yes.
Thank you. Is there no objection? Thank you, no objection. I recognize the acting government chief whip.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that orders number 3 be stood off, 3 to order number 19 be stood off until order number 20 has been disposed with.
Until order number?
Until order number 20.
20.
Yes, been
Who
disposed.
seconds?
I second, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Notice of motion number 20, Honorable Bajila.
Notice of motion number 20, Mr. Speaker.
Who seconds?
I second, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Bajila, you know the languages. You're supposed to say, I move the motion in my name.
My apologies, Mr. Speaker. I move the motion in my name.
Thank you. Who seconds?
I second, Mr. Speaker.
Who's that there?
Honorable Modzeri Rua.
Honorable?
Modzeri.
Honorable Modzeri, yes. Thank you. I call upon Honorable Bajila to move his motion.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. This motion is a report of the Portfolio Committee on Health and Childcare on the petition from Mr. Ngwenya and Ms. Nongo on the prevention and management of non-communicable diseases in Zimbabwe. Mr. Speaker, the petitioners requested that Parliament consider the proposal to repeal the National AIDS Council Act, Chapter 1514, and in its place enact a comprehensive National Health Council bill. This new act would consolidate health financing from all health-related taxes
including the AIDS levy, the mobile and the broadband levy, the corrective taxes on tobacco, sugar, and ultra-processed foods, often referred to as fast food taxes, under a single umbrella managed by the proposed council. Such a framework would streamline resources and facilitate a more coordinated and effective response to Zimbabwe's evolving NCT challenge. The petitioners also sought that Parliament regulates the production and sale of unhealthy foods and beverages, as well as increase taxes on tobacco and alcohol products, as well as improve access to essential NCT medication and mental health services. The objectives of the committee were to appreciate the proposal of the petitioners, to respond adequately, and to offer policy recommendations for improvements in operations. Our methodology, Mr. Speaker, came through receiving oral evidence from Mr. Ngwenya of the Zimbabwe Non-Communicable Diseases Champions Network. We also received oral evidence from the Permanent Secretary on Health and Child Care, Dr. AJV Maunganidze, as well as the Chief Executive Officer of the National AIDS Council, Dr. B. Madzima, who accompanied the Permanent Secretary. Both petitioners and the ministry further provided written submissions in support of their respective positions. The committee findings, Mr. Speaker, to effectively respond to the petitioner's request, the committee categorized prayers into two distinct areas: the regulation of risk factors associated with NCTs and the proposed expansion of the National AIDS Council's mandate to manage NCTs and the mental health, in addition to what it already does. Accordingly, the committee's findings are presented under these two thematic areas. On regulation of the causes of NCTs, the petitioners recognized that major causes of NCTs include eating unhealthy foods and abuse of tobacco and alcohol products, and therefore called for regulation of these risk factors. The Minister of Health and Child Care expressed similar sentiments and outlined various initiatives already promulgated by the ministry in conjunction with Treasury. For example, the 2025 national budget proposed 0.5% tax on fast foods, which is widely known as fast foods tax. This is regarded as a broader strategy to tackle NCDs linked to poor diet and encourage or incentivize fast foods operators to offer healthier choices. Government hopes to foster a culture of responsible consumption among Zimbabweans. Linked to the above, Mr. Speaker, in 2024, the national budget, in the national budget, Treasury introduced sugar tax of 0.02 cents per gram of sugar in soft drinks, which was later reduced to 0.002 cents per gram and further reduced to 0.0005 cents per gram after an outcry from manufacturers and the consumers. Previous national budgets have outlined a cocktail of interventions such as sin taxes, the excise duty on tobacco and alcohol. Through such taxes, the government can ensure availability of essential medicines, diagnostics tools, and treatment, integration of NCTs and mental health services into primary health care, special attention to rural and underserved communities, therefore guaranteeing equitable access to medical care. This basket of taxes are earmarked for NCTs, and therefore the committee recognized that already the government is making strides to ensure adequate financial resources for NCTs, and this part of the petitioner's prayer is well covered, although the administration of the funds remain an area of concern to the committee. coming to existing ministry interventions. The Ministry of Health and Childcare indicated that the ministry is implementing various initiatives towards the prevention and management of NCTs, including conducting awareness programs throughout the country, HPV vaccination campaigns for cervical cancer, package of essential and non-communicable diseases interventions, PEN, and PEN plus programs for chronic and complex conditions, mental health care call center, and establishment of rehabilitation centers for drug and substance abuse. These initiatives, Mr. Speaker, are being scaled up under the National Health Strategy 2021 to 2025 and the National Cancer Care Control 2025 to 2030. Coming to existing establishments of, coming to the issue of establishment of national NCTs and mental health council. The petitioners acknowledged that Zimbabwe has managed to draw herself out of HIV and AIDS scourge through the National AIDS and Council, through the National AIDS Council and the AIDS Levy, and proposed a similar analog in the management of NCTs. The petitioners proposed the repealing of the National AIDS Council Act and replacing it with an inclusive National Health Council Act, which will consolidate health levies, including the AIDS levy, airtime and broadband health levy, sin tax on tobacco and alcohol products, sugar sweetened and the fast food taxes, into a national health fund to be managed by the National Health Council. The new council will facilitate strategic investment across major health challenges, including HIV and AIDS, NCTs, mental health, maternal and child health, among others. Mr. Speaker, the ministry acknowledged that the petitioner's proposals reflected its own technical position and the alliance with public health needs, as well as the broader goal of advancing integrated service delivery. While recognizing the proposal as ideal, the ministry recommended a phased and hybrid approach to its implementation. It advised for caution, noting that imposing new obligations on the National AIDS Council at a time when the country has not yet fully overcome HIV and AIDS epidemic could risk diluting the gains and achievement made thus far. Mr. Speaker, the ministry observed that the National AIDS Council has already been affected by withdrawal of funding from the United States government, underscoring the need to capacitate the institution rather than burden it with additional responsibilities. It was also noted that the council has already begun engaging with matters related to non-communicable diseases and mental health through an integrated approach to disease management. Committee observations. First committee observations relates to regulation of risk factors. The Ministry of Health and Childcare and Treasury have already proposed a range of taxes earmarked for the prevention and management of non-communicable diseases, including taxes on fast foods, sugar-sweetened beverages, airtime, and other relevant products. Despite being explicitly linked to NCTs, these taxes are not ring-fenced and continue to be channeled to the Consolidated Revenue Fund. This practice effectively diverts resources away from their intended purpose, undermining efforts to establish a sustainable and predictable funding stream for NCT interventions. The committee notes that without ring-fencing, the connection between the levy and the intended health outcomes is weakened, and the potential to meaningfully address the growing NCT burden remains unrealized. Our second observation relates to the issue of the expansion of the National AIDS Council into the National Health Council. Mr. Speaker, the committee was satisfied that the National AIDS Council has capacity to manage non-communicable diseases. The council already actively involved itself in the prevention of and management of NCTs through an integrated disease management approach, recognizing that the majority of people living with HIV and AIDS are also susceptible to the devastating effects of NCTs such as hypertension, diabetes, and cancers. This integrated model has enabled the council to broaden its scope of work without compromising its core mandate. Furthermore, the National AIDS Council has demonstrated robust financial management capacity as evidenced by its consistent track record of securing and utilizing funds from various sources, including development partners. The Council's ability to manage diverse funding streams is supported by its unqualified audit opinions and the absence of adverse funding in the Auditor General's reports over successive years. This financial integrity positions the NAC as a credible institution capable of administering additional resources should its mandate be expanded to comprehensively address NCDs and mental health. Committee recommendations. Arising from its findings and observations, the committee makes the following recommendations, Mr. Speaker. 1. Ring-fencing of health taxes. The Ministry of Health and Childcare and Treasury should enact legislation to ring-fence revenue generated from taxes on sugar, fast foods, tobacco, alcohol, and the health levy to ensure that these funds are channeled exclusively towards their intended purposes, particularly the prevention and management of non-communicable diseases and mental health conditions. This legislative measure should be reflected in the 2027 national budget and guarantee predictable and sustainable funding for NCD interventions. 2. Phased expansion of the NAC mandate. In the 4th Zimbabwe National HIV and AIDS Strategy Plan, ZINASP 4, for the period 2026 to 2030, the Ministry of Health and Childcare and the National AIDS Council should clearly articulate the roadmap for expanding the role of National AIDS Council in the prevention of management of NCDs and mental health. In the short to medium term, a phased approach that builds on the Council's existing integrated disease management model, leveraging its infrastructure and expertise while managing focus on HIV and AIDS. 4. In the long term, the enactment of legislation to formally mandate the National AIDS Council with full responsibility for coordinating NCDs and mental health interventions. This legislative framework should be completed by December 2026, establishing a comprehensive and coordinated response to Zimbabwe's evolving disease burden. In conclusion, the petitions by Mr. Ngwenya and Ms. Nongo, where they recommended for Parliament to repeal the National AIDS Council Act, Chapter 15.14, and replace the National AIDS Council that would assume management and basket of already announced taxes under one umbrella was noble and progressive. However, the endorsement should be implemented through a long-term plan or a phased approach, and this obligation should be clearly articulated in the ZINASP 4, 2026 to 2030. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Bajila. The question before the House is a motion by Honorable Bajila that this House considers and adopts the report of the Portfolio Committee on Health and Childcare on the petition from Mr. Ngwenya and Ms. Nango on the prevention and management of non-communicable diseases, NCDs. Is there any debate? I've got a list here that I have on members. I will start by recognizing Honorable Muodzeri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, ndasimuka ndichida kutsigira naurwa yapinzwa mudare rino naHonorable Bajila. Taona zvakakosha kuti vanga vambotora vachitarisa mashandisirwo emari dze-HIV. Takaona tasvika pachidanho pe 95. Zvinorakidza izvo kuti ichokwadi kuti mari idzi dzakashandiswa nevanhu vane utesve
wenjere nekuti takaona chirwere chaderera zvikuru zvinoratidza kuti vane ruzivo rwokuchengetedza mari dzinoita nezveutano hwevanhu. Saka tinoona zvakanaka kana kuti ndinotsigira kuti zvakanaka kuti vange vachipuhwa mukana wekuti vange vachitora zvemari dzesugar tax, tobacco tax nemamwe zviganhurwa zvemari zvakataurwa mudare rino, kuti vange vachitarisisa mari idzi, nekuti ndinoona kuti tikavapa mukana ivo vaine ruzivo zvakare ende vakarakidza kuti mari idzi vanogona kudzishandisa, zvinoita kuti utano hwedu hunge huchienderera mberi munyika muno. Uyezve vakarakidza kuti vakapiwa mari idzi vanodzishandisa nemazvo ende uyezve vanokwanisa kunge vachitipa nhoroondo yekuti mari idzi vadzishandisei. Ichokwadi mubati wechigaro kuti chirwere cheHIV tasvika pachidanho chekuti changa chatopera, hatina nhoroondo yatakambonzwa kushandiswa kwemari iyi zvisina tsarukano. Saka ndinotsigira zvinyorwa zvanyorwa naHonorable Bajila uyezve zvakataurwa nekomiti yehealth kana kuti zvakatsigirwa nekomiti yehealth kuti koda tadi kupa vanhu ava mari idzi vanga vagara vachimbobata dzimwe dzemari, nekuti mukatarisa mubato wechigaro kana tichitaura muchirungu tichiti structures vanawo kare muchirungu. Saka handione kuti pane zvinganetsa kuti tikavapa mukana wekutarisa mari idzi tinowanikwa tichizoti vatadza kudzishandisa nekuti vakadarikidza zvatakanga tatarisira tawirwa nechirwere cheshuramatongo. Saka ndisingade kupedza mashoko akawanda, ndinotsigira kuti dai tambovapa mukana iwoyo sewatakavapa pekutanga pachirwere cheshuramatongo kuti vange varivo vatinoti muchirungu the custodians dzemari iyi, kuti tione utano hwedu huchienda mberi, nekuti munhu wese kana ari muno kufamba kunge aine utano hwakanaka. Saka chatinokurudzira munyika yedu kuti tibudirire utano. Saka ndinotsigira kuti hativapei mari iyi, vaitarisise ivo nekuishandisa, handione vachipukana. Ndatenda. Tinotenda Honorable Mozeri. The next member to take the floor is Honorable Molokele. He's no longer in the house, okay. So we move on to Honorable Machangu.
Lichonile mphathulo.
Sichonile lichona njani mhlonitsho?
Ngiyabonga ithuba ebanginike lona, ngiphinde ngixolisa ukuthi unganilizwi lami kaliphumi kahle ngoba nginyenyelwa ngumkhuhlane womvimbano. Lami ngiphakamele ukuthi ngixoxe kancane ngodaba olulethwe kule inkundla ngu-Honorable Bajila mayelana logwalo olwalotshwa nguMnumzana uNgwenya loNkosazana uNongo belesikhalazo babelaso mayelana ngokulawulwa kwezezimali lezi ezimayelana lemikhuhlane engathelelanayo esingathi ngama-NCDs. Yona kimnengi limkhuhlane njalo isibhahile, isilethe umthwalo omnengi ezweni lasezimulini lasemdenini lasezihlobeni. Kodwa nje into engiyithabelayo ukuthi ilizwe lakwethu leZimbabwe liyakunanzelela khona ukuthi ikhona imkhuhlane eminye ethuleyo enjengabomkhuhlane wemvukuzane, umkhuhlane wechukela, umkhuhlane wegazi elibilayo, imkhuhlane konke echiyeneyo eyona ephazamisa lokulawulwa kwabantu ekuphileni kwabo. Njalo ukuthi uthole usizo ngokwelatshwa ngokusheshsha kumbe ukuthi kubonakale ngokusheshsha kuba ngumlando omkhulu kakhulu njalo uma uthola ukuncediswa kumbe ngokulatshwa kuyabiza izinga eliphezulu kwezezimali. Ebese ngiphenduka ke kudaba olulethweyo lapha. Kungumqondo omuhle ukuthi sinanzelela ukuthi inak ilubambeka kahle udaba lokuhlela kwezimali ngesikhathi ilizwe lomhlaba wethu ubhekane lodaba lwengculaza. Ingculaza ubungumthwalo omkhulu onzima kwelakithi njalo ubusesabisa njalo ukuthi uzwe umuntu esithi ngiphethwe ingculaza kumbe ilegcikwane ngokuyinto angani iyethusa. Kodwa ngokunanzelela inakhi idlale indima enkulu kakhulu ngoba namhlanje iZimbabwe isiphose iphume kulowo mkhuhlane ngoba sebethola ukuthi lathi abantu sebesifundisile, lathi abantu sesikwazi ukuthi sisiphatha kanjani, lathi abantu masinatha lawo maphilizi imithi esiyiphiweyo basifundisa ukuthi sikuqoqa kanjani. Ngakho nje abantu baphepha ekufeni kulolu bhedane lomkhuhlane ade lukhona lwengculaza. Ngokunjalo ngiyananzelela ke ukuthi yebo lezi inhlawulo ezikhona ezabo sugar tax, sin tax, tobacco tax uma zingalawulwa zifakwe kusitsha esifanayo ngoba laba sebelembali yokuthi bakusebenzisa kanjani, balembali lolwazi lokuqeqesha ukuthi bangakuphatha kanjani njalo ukuthi kube le National Health Council lami ngibona kusekela kakhulu ngoba kwenza umsebenzi ibe lula njalo abantu bethu bathole usizo endaweni abayaziyo ukuthi sihamba ngaphi. Ngokunjalo msomlomo ngithi lolu hambo uma luvumakala kalube luhambo lukafudu kancane kancane besethulelwa imithwalo eyinise isehliswa eminye ifakwa ukuze siyephutsha lelo zinga elifiswayo yilabo abaphakamise lolu gwalo. Nginanzelela ke ukuthi uma sisipha abantu somlomo abade belolwazi osebeke bayihamba lindima kulokugcinakala kwezezimali esingathi security ngesikhiwa kube lokuqiniseka lokubonakala lokulandelwa ngendlela ecacileyo ukuthi sebenza kanjani esingathi transparency and accountability. Njalo sinanzelele ukuthi abantu abanjalo kuba lula ukuthi behlolwe behluzwe ngoba sebesekwazi sihamba kubani. Kathesi kunjenje kuphasalele akwazakala ukuthi imali zangikhona zoneze ezithathwayo ziya ngaphi, zisehla ngothini luphi, kwezempilo na, njalo sizalawulwa njani. Ngokunjalo mphathi lami ngiyagcizelela ukuthi hayi akube khona khonokho okuhlelwayo ukuthi inek iphiwe lo mlando ngoba lokhu kuhambisana lezi nguquko zikahulumende ezifana le Cape Big 3 ukuthi kuqiniseke ukuthi silandele lokuqiniseka ukuthi abantu bathola ukuthuthuka, abantu bathola ukugcinakala, abantu bathola ukuthi nxa sesiyafika lapho sifisa khona ukuthi umbono wethu ka Vision 2030 ufike sonke sesikwazi ukuthi nxa ngibulawa umkhuhlane wechukama njengami izolo kunjayile ngagijima ngaya esibhedlela ngithola uncedo yebo kodwa ngingena ngilokuthandabuza ukuthi amaphilizi angikhona azangidulela hlezi imali yangikhona kangilayo ebese ngikhumbula kumuntu osemakhaya khona le emaphandleni ukuthi kuyamtshaya kwinto khonokho ngoba nxa kukuchayile sibili hayi uzalala ilanga lonke ungazi ukuthi ungenza kanjani. So nami ke ngiyabonga ke ithuba linike lona ukuthi lami ngifake alami ilizwi ngalolu gwalo. Ngiyabonga.
Siyabonga mhlonishwa Machangu, njalo sibonga indlela osebenzise ngayo ulimi lwethu lesintu ungaluphaqalezanga kuyancomeka khonokho ukuba nabantu bafunde ukukhuluma indimi zabo ngokupheleleyo. Siyabonga. The next honorable member to take the floor is Honorable Munemo.
Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker, sir, for affording me this chance to air my voice on the petition raised to the Portfolio Committee of Health, also aired in by Honorable Bajila. Honorable Speaker, preventing non-communicable diseases, NCDs, primarily cardiovascular disease, cancer, chronic respiratory disease, and diabetes is crucial, as they account for 75% of global deaths. Key preventive measures center on eliminating tobacco, reducing alcohol, increasing physical activity, eating healthy diets, and minimizing air pollution. Honorable Speaker, I think it is so prudent to prevent such diseases, and it needs a substantial funding to implement the strategies. We have individual lifestyles that are so dangerous to our human lives, like the smoking of tobacco, and also having unhealthy diet, living physical activities, and also we need to limit alcohol to reduce alcohol consumption to lower risks of cardiovascular disease and cancer. We also need to go for regular screening, monitor blood pressure, blood glucose, and body mass index, BMI, to detect any metabolic changes. Honorable Speaker, I think it is so pertinent to adopt the issue of having tax on such goods like tobacco, alcohol, etc. A sin tax is an excise tax levied on specific goods deemed harmful or undesirable, such as tobacco, alcohol, gambling, and sugar-sweetened beverages. Its primary goals are to reduce consumption of these products and raise government revenue to offset related social or health costs. These taxes are frequently called sumptuary or vice taxes. I support the issue of ring-fencing such revenues so that they will specifically be implemented or be injected to the prevention of such communicable diseases like tuberculosis and cancer diseases. I also support the petitioner in the ministry to have a good budget or an adequate budget for this, since they are causing a lot of fatalities within our demography. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Munemu. The next honorable member to take the floor is Honorable Karen Kore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, I would like to add my voice on the report of the Portfolio Committee of health. And I would like to thank Honorable Bajila for the report. Mr. Speaker, as you also know, that normally when we get this kind of petitions, most of the petitions would be like having some issues, which will also Parliament have some other issues, and they will end up not supporting each other. But on this one, Mr. Speaker, I would like to add my voice and also support this petition. Mr. Speaker, Zimbabwe is currently facing a serious and growing crisis on non-communicable diseases, which is now accounting to approximately above 31% of all deaths. This includes conditions such as cancer, diabetes, heart diseases, and they are placing a heavy burden on our already strained healthcare system. Mr. Speaker, the first reason I want to support this report is the need of a more coordinated and efficient health system. At present, Mr. Speaker, our approach of health is fragmented. HIV/AIDS, non-communicable diseases, and mental health are treated separately, Mr. Speaker. But if you check those for mental health, usually they are also facing a lot of stigmatization and other related issues. And Mr. Speaker, these are separately, Mr. Speaker, would be also a burden to our health service. Yet in reality, these conditions are interconnected. By expanding the National AIDS Council into a broader National Health Council, Zimbabwe can adopt a more integrated approach and ensure better planning, better coordination, and a better service, a better delivery of services. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the issue of funding cannot be ignored. The government has already introduced the sugar tax, fast foods, tobacco, and alcohol to help to address these non-communicable diseases. Mr. Speaker, it has been an outcry in this August House about the issue of sugar tax and other taxes. But Mr. Speaker, I would like to say I think this is going to help us to make sure that we also channel our resources to the designated positions. However, Mr. Speaker, these funds are not ring-fenced and are instead directed into consolidated revenue fund. This means that the money intended for health is always used for is not always used for the intended purposes. The committee's recommendations to ring-fence these funds is both practical and necessary to ensure that all the money which are for health issues are always sustainable and also go to the issue of health financing. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, the National AIDS Council has already proved its capacity, as the chair has already highlighted. It has a strong track record, which has also been mentioned, and I strongly feel that with constant clean audits and successful coordination of the HIV/AIDS response, Mr. Speaker, it is key so that we also support them. This shows that it is a credible and capable institution that can take on an extended role, especially through a phased approach that avoids disruption and ongoing programs. Mr. Speaker, some may argue that expanding the National Council's mandate would also weaken the fight against HIV and AIDS. However, the committee clearly recommends a gradual and carefully managed transition, Mr. Speaker. This ensures that the gains made in HIV and AIDS are protected while also addressing the rising burden of other diseases. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, this report presents a progressive and realistic solution to Zimbabwe's involving health challenges by improving coordination, securing dedicated funding, and building on existing institutional strength. We can create a stronger and more inclusive health system. I therefore urge this House, Mr. Speaker, to support the recommendations from the committee so that we also have a well-coordinated and a responsive health financing. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kareni. The next honorable member to take the floor is Honorable Jonga.
Mr. Speaker, sir.
Yes. Acting Chief Whip.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I move that the debate do now adjourn.
Who seconds?
I second, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you. It has been moved that the debate be now adjourned. Is there any debate? I put the question that the debate be now adjourned. Those who are of that opinion will say aye. Those of the contrary opinion will say no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. The question is accordingly affirmed and the debate is adjourned. To what day, Acting Government Chief Whip?
To tomorrow, Mr. Speaker, sir.
To tomorrow. Thank you. I recognize you again.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I move that the House do now adjourn.
Who seconds?
I second, Mr. Speaker, sir.
It has been moved that the House do now adjourn. Is there any debate? I put the question that the House do now adjourn. Those who are of that opinion will say aye. Those of the contrary opinion will say no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. The question is accordingly affirmed and the House is adjourned. To what day, Honorable Acting Government Chief Whip?
To tomorrow, Mr. Speaker, sir.
The House is adjourned to tomorrow. Have a good night. Thank you.